They said no woman in her condition would survive a Flagstaff winter. Not with the snow, closing roads, not with a baby due in 6 weeks, and certainly not with only a German shepherd as her guardian. But Olivia Carter came anyway. She wasn't looking for shelter. She was looking for answers, the kind buried in a forgotten storage cabin she never meant to win, in a town that whispered more than it spoke. Most people saw a collapsing shed at the edge of the pines, but Olivia and her loyal shepherd Max saw something else. A doorway to the past, a chance to heal what was never truly lost. Because sometimes what we think is the end of the road is really the place our story finally begins. Before we continue, tell me where you're watching from. Drop your city below and subscribe if you believe in family fate and the miracles that find us when we least expect them. Snow sifted over the outskirts of Flagstaff, dimming the pines and softening the old road to powder. Olivia Carter eased her weathered Ford pickup to a stop, the engine ticking into silence as the cold rushed in through the door seams. 28, 7 months pregnant, she moved with the careful economy of someone who had learned to negotiate both gravity and grief. Her dark chestnut hair was braided beneath a gray beanie. Her hazel eyes ringed faintly from long nights of restless thought. A supple warmth still lived in her features, but lately it shared space with a guardedness, an instinct to brace before the next surprise arrived. She pressed a palm to the firm curve of her belly and felt the faintest shift, a reminder of the one future that kept insisting on itself, no matter how many pasts tried to intrude. She had not intended to win a storage cabin. She had bought the charity raffle ticket at the hospital gift shop after a routine prenatal appointment, coaxed by a clerk with a paper-thin voice and a grandmother's smile who said, "Honey, sometimes the universe likes to show off." Olivia didn't believe in a showy universe. She believed in lists, recipes, and the small kindnesses that could be offered without ceremony. But the letter had come official and neat, telling her a shed in the pines was hers to claim. As she stepped out, boots crunching, she inhaled the air, pine resin, distant wood smoke, and the clean hush that follows fresh snow, and told herself this was only an errand, another box to tick before she drove back to Tempe and the rented duplex with the squeaky faucet and the crib still in its flat pack. Max hopped down from the passenger seat, landing light as muscle and purpose. 3 years old, a German shepherd of strong lines and disciplined grace, he carried a handsome saddle of black and tan across a broad back. His amber eyes were quick and steady, and his ears tipped forward the way a question leans toward its answer. He'd once belonged to a retired patrolman who, after losing his son in a highway collision, rehomed Max when the routines of obedience and service began to echo too loudly. Olivia, a former elementary art teacher with soft hands and a steady voice, had met Max at the shelter during a winter fundraiser and recognized in the stillness of his posture a grief that had learned to wait rather than roar. Since then, he had been her shadow, equal parts guardian and witness, attuned to the smallest flinch of her breath. The cabin crouched a little apart from the clearing, gray boards weathered to ash, a single window filmed with grime, so thick it reflected only a smeared suggestion of sky. Olivia fitted the key into a reluctant lock and felt a prickle of resistance, metal stiff with years and a meaning she could not name. She paused, palm flat over her abdomen, and understood the odd pressure in her vibrant chest, not fear, not quite anticipation, but the fragile awareness that something in there might speak to something in here, and if it did, she would have to listen. The lock gave with a tired click. A pall of cold, stale air wafted out, smelling of damp paper and cedar that had forgotten sun. Max slipped in, first head low, shoulders rolling through the dim, as though memory itself had a scent he could parse. Olivia followed, one hand on the door frame, the other along the wall to steady the way. Light entered like a rumor through the cloudy window. Shapes slumped under yellowed sheets. Boxes stacked to shoulder height made narrow aisles, a paper city abandoned mid-century. Olivia reached for a sheet and tugged it free, dust rising like old snow. A writing desk emerged, oak scarred at the edges, dings gathered like initials carved in a life well used. Her fingers found a leather-bound album resting in the shadow of the desk, the cover rubbed smooth by the passage of hands. She opened it and saw a baby girl wrapped in a knitted blanket in the crook of a woman's arm, the woman silvering at the temples with eyes kind enough to carry a winter alone. The next page held the child a year older. Gapped smile, sticky fingers, a cake lopsided with delight, And then another page and another, the child racing sprinklers, hugging a science fair ribbon, standing at a window on Christmas Eve. Olivia did not register the rooms or the clothing. She saw eyes, almond-shaped ringed faintly in gold. Eyes that tilted with the smile in a way she had noticed in her own reflection since girlhood. Her stomach fluttered. A wave moved through her chest, both crest and undertow. Max gave a soft, measured woof once, then twice, then a third time, the signal he'd taught himself: for this matters, but it will not harm. She set the album down with a care that felt ceremonial and knelt beside a half-open box beneath the desk. Inside, medical forms, tax folders, utility bills, in tidy stacks, and a bundle of envelopes tied with a faded blue ribbon. The top envelope bore two words in clear cursive: to Mom, and the neatness of it, the effort to keep love legible across years, undid her. She thought of the man who had sworn he was ready for fatherhood until he wasn't, of the way his absence now lived as a subtle bracing in her shoulders whenever a door closed too quickly. She thought of the mother who had done her best with budgets and baked ziti and a calendar crowded with shift work, a woman practical in every way except for faith in the impossible, which she guarded like a private holiday. She thought of herself, Olivia Carter, patient teacher, reluctant believer in luck, standing in a shed she had not meant to find, holding the edge of a ribbon that made the air feel dense and the future strangely specific. The baby rolled a small press from within, as if echoing yes. Olivia lifted the stack of letters, and something in the room seemed to realign the way a compass needle finds north after a long tremor. She did not read, not yet. She only knew the silence had changed from vacancy to attention, because the past, even when boxed, knows when it has been seen. She looked at Max, whose gaze had softened into that rare unguarded dog smile, and in the hush between her inhale and her exhale, she understood the feeling that had shadowed her since the key turned. She was not arriving. She was being expected. Max's ears flicked forward, his amber eyes alert, as he pressed his nose against the edge of a weathered wooden chest half buried beneath a stack of boxes. Olivia Carter, still breathless from the shock of the photo album, felt a strange pull in her chest. The same invisible thread that had guided her through the doorway, now tugging her deeper into the cabin's forgotten heart. Her fingers pale in the dim light and trembling faintly with the effort of crouching in her pregnant state, brushed dust from the chest's lid. The wood had once been cherry brown, but was now the color of frostbitten bark, its iron clasp rusted yet ornate, carved with initials barely visible beneath grime. E.M. Olivia paused, repeating the letter silently, and a whisper of familiarity stirred, though she could not place its origin. She unlatched the chest with a soft creak that echoed like a sigh through the cabin. Inside lay a collection of bound journals, loose envelopes, and a folded Christmas card whose edges curled like petals of an old rose. The name Evelyn Miller was written in graceful script across the first journal cover. Olivia's heartbeat thrummed in her ears as she opened it to the first page, dated 33 years ago. The handwriting was elegant, the strokes deliberate, reflecting a woman of control and introspection. Evelyn described her life in Phoenix, her longing for a family, and the miracle of adopting a baby girl she named Samantha Miller. Olivia's eyes slowed over the words the first time she looked at me. I felt chosen by God, and she felt the baby in her own belly shift as though responding to a memory not hers, but somehow embedded in her. Max let out a quiet chuff and nudged Olivia's elbow, directing her attention toward a sealed envelope tied with blue ribbon. She untied it, revealing a letter addressed not to Samantha, but to the birth mother. Olivia read with mounting astonishment. Evelyn confessed that when Samantha turned 18, a woman named Angela Brooks had come seeking contact, claiming to be Samantha's biological mother. Evelyn admitted she had panicked. She had loved Samantha fiercely and irrationally feared being replaced, so she had intercepted letters and manipulated Samantha into rejecting her birth mother, insisting the woman was only seeking to relieve her own guilt. The words trembled with remorse. I stole from you both the chance to heal. If God gives me time, I will make this right. Olivia's throat tightened as tears welled unbidden. She understood in that moment not just the pain of a mother losing a child, but the terrible desperation of someone who had built her identity on motherhood and feared losing it. Olivia lifted the Christmas card. It had never been sent. The handwriting was weaker here, the ink uneven. Samantha, it is time you know the truth about your first mother. I lied to protect myself. I pray one day you will forgive me. There was no signature. just a smudge at the end as though Evelyn's strength had failed mid-stroke. Olivia placed the card gently aside, breathing slowly, one hand unconsciously stroking the curve of her belly. Her mind was turning, assembling pieces faster than she could steady her thoughts. Angela Brooks, Phoenix, adoption, 18 years, a truth hidden. Compelled by an instinct buried deeper than thought, Olivia pulled her phone from her coat pocket and typed Angela Brooks, Phoenix, Arizona nurse. The moment the search results appeared, her breath caught. A photograph popped up in a community article, a woman in her late 40s with warm brown skin, thick black hair, pulled into a clipped bun, deep-set amber eyes that held sorrow beneath gentleness. Angela Brooks, community nurse and grief counselor. Olivia's pulse thudded. Those eyes, they resembled the ones in the photo album. They resembled her own. Her mind recoiled, then surged forward with horrifying clarity. Phoenix, Angela Brooks, adoption, a girl named Samantha, a woman named Evelyn, Flagstaff, a storage cabin won by chance, and Olivia herself adopted at birth, given few records, told only that her mother had been unable to care for an infant. She had never known her birth mother's name. Until now. Max, sensing the tremor in her body, rested his head gently against her knee. His quiet presence grounded her as memories fought to the surface. Questions she had buried, moments of mirrors and reflections that never fully made sense. The unspoken ache that had lived in her since childhood, always searching for a face that matched her own. She closed her eyes and exhaled shakily. For the first time, she allowed herself to whisper the possibility this wasn't random. I was led here. Her phone buzzed in her palm. A gust of cold wind whistled through the cabin as if urging her onward. Olivia looked back into the chest and saw something she hadn't noticed before: a birth certificate copy folded and yellowed beneath the journals. Her hands came alive with trembling as she retrieved it. The paper crackled as she unfolded it, revealing the name of the infant baby girl, Brooks. Birthplace, Phoenix. Date identical to Olivia's own birth date. Mother, Angela Brooks. Olivia dropped to her knees, a soft cry escaping her lips. Not of pain, but of recognition. The child within her pressed outward as if responding to a truth awakening in the blood. Max let out 3 sharp barks, his voice echoing through the rafters, affirming undeniable. Olivia Carter had not stumbled into Evelyn Miller's forgotten past. She had walked directly into her own beginnings. Morning light crept over Flagstaff in a muted wash of silver, the kind that made every breath look visible, as if the sky itself exhaled. Olivia Carter stood outside Route 66 Diner, its neon sign flickering against the snow-dusted windows, and for a brief moment she considered turning back. Her heart beat not with panic, but with a brittle kind of anticipation, the kind a person feels just before the truth either heals them or breaks them beyond repair. She smoothed her thick navy coat over the curve of her belly, feeling the baby shift gently, reminding her she would not be facing this alone. Beside her, Max stood poised, tail low but steady, his breath forming thin streams in the cold. His dark ears were pricked, alert but calm, the embodiment of wordless faith. The bell over the diner door chimed softly as Olivia stepped inside. The warmth met her, instantly smelling of roasted coffee beans, sizzling bacon, and cinnamon pie. The interior was a quilt of red vinyl booths and checkered tile floors, sunlight glancing off chrome fixtures. A jukebox hummed quietly in the corner, playing an old love song that wove itself into the air like a memory. Olivia inhaled deeply, grounding herself. Her eyes flicked to the window just in time to see a dark sedan pull into the parking lot. From the car stepped Angela Brooks. Angela entered with cautious steps, as if each movement were measured against an invisible weight. She was in her late 40s, wearing a long wool coat, the color of charcoal. Her skin was warm brown smooth, but etched with fine lines at the mouth, and eyes not from age but from decades of withheld words. Her hair, deep black with strands of silver woven near the temples, was pulled into a low twist. Angela's build was tall and graceful, with the controlled posture of someone who had spent years comforting others while never allowing herself to collapse. Her eyes, hazel with flecks of gold, locked onto Olivia's, and in that instant, Olivia felt the air between them still, as though every clock in the diner had paused to watch destiny unfold. Angela's voice carried a tremor beneath its softness, the sound of a question that held both terror and hope. Olivia could only nod. She felt her throat tighten as Angela took a tentative step forward, then stopped, as if afraid another step might shatter the fragile reality before her. Max, sensing the moment, lowered himself beneath the table Olivia had chosen, resting his head on his paws, but keeping his eyes fixed attentively on Angela, assessing not threat but emotional voltage. They sat across from one another, hands folded, breath shallow. For a long moment, Olivia could hear only the low hum of conversation around them and the metronome of her own heartbeat. Finally, she spoke, her voice quiet but steady. She told Angela about the storage cabin, about Evelyn's journals, the photo album, the letter that had never been delivered. She did not embellish or soften the truth. She laid it bare like an open wound that needed cleansing. With each revelation, she watched Angela's face shift: shock, disbelief, grief, guilt, a lifetime of emotions rising and falling, like waves against a breakwater. When Angela spoke, her voice broke only once. She confessed she had been 19, scared, alone, disowned by a religious mother who believed childbirth outside marriage was a shame to be buried, not redeemed. Angela described walking through hospital corridors with swollen feet and a breaking heart, signing adoption papers because everyone around her insisted it was the only path to give her daughter a chance at a real life. "I wanted you," she said, eyes shimmering, "but I was told wanting wasn't enough when you had nothing to offer except love." Olivia felt tears rise but did not look away. She listened as Angela explained that on Olivia's 18th birthday, she had fought to reconnect, only to be told her daughter refused to meet. "I thought you hated me," Angela whispered. "I thought I had no right to try again." The pain in her voice was not loud. It was the quiet kind, the kind that sits in a woman's bones for decades. A waitress approached to refill their coffee, a woman in her 50s with strawberry blonde hair tied into a bun and kind blue eyes. Her name tag read Sandra. She spoke softly, sensing the gravity at the booth, and placed an extra plate of apple pie between them on the house. She said nothing else, but her glance said, "I've seen lives change over pie and prayers in this very booth." Max nudged Olivia's foot, a gentle reminder that she was safe. The baby moved inside her belly, slow and deliberate, as if turning toward the sound of its grandmother's voice. Olivia inhaled shakily, then whispered words that felt both terrifying and deeply right. "I don't know what happens next, but I'm here." Angela's hand trembled where it rested on the table. Slowly, Olivia extended her own. Angela hesitated only a second before reaching out. Their fingers met, not with the certainty of a fairy tale, but with the fragile courage of two souls daring to try. In that moment, the diner noise softened to a hush. Angela stood as if pulled by instinct, eyes glistening, and Olivia rose too. The embrace that followed was not polished or graceful. It was awkward, with elbows bumping and breath caught in throats. It lasted only seconds, but in those seconds, a mother felt her heartbeat return to rhythm, and a daughter felt the ache in her chest soften for the first time in 28 years. And beneath the table, Max rested his head on his paws and closed his eyes as if satisfied that the world, if only in this booth, had begun to mend itself. Snow fell in thin, shimmering veils over the pines as Olivia guided her truck back toward the storage cabin, this time not alone but with Angela seated quietly in the passenger seat, hands clasped tightly in her lap, as though holding the fragments of a past she wasn't yet certain she deserved to reclaim. Her expression was calm on the surface, but her eyes betrayed that internal tremor, the mix of hope, fear, and disbelief that arises only when a long-buried truth begins to take physical shape. Angela Brooks had the bearing of someone who had spent decades tending to others as a nurse, as a mother, as a woman who stitched emotional wounds, while never allowing her own to be seen, but now sitting beside her daughter in the soft glow of winter light, she seemed smaller, humbled, as though time itself had turned her mortal and in need of permission to be forgiven. Max sat in the back seat, head between the front seats, like a vigilant sentinel. The German Shepherd's dark amber eyes flicked between the two women as though reading their heartbeats, sensing the invisible bridge newly forming between mother and daughter. When they reached the cabin clearing, Max jumped down with purpose, scanning the perimeter with ears raised, tail low, and steady, a dog not just present, but on duty to guard a healing in progress. Inside the cabin no longer smelled solely of dust and abandonment. The act of entering it with knowledge had transformed the air. It now carried the presence of memory itself. Olivia lit the oil heater near the window, then moved carefully across the room, mindful of her rounded belly. The baby stirred as if responding to the energy in the space. Angela followed slowly, her fingertips brushing along the weathered walls, her breath catching each time her eyes landed on something that once belonged to Evelyn or Samantha, two women who had shaped the course of her life with choices made out of love, fear, and consequence. They began to work. Olivia, despite her pregnancy, insisted on sweeping the floor, clearing dust and pine needles from corners, while Angela repaired a broken window pane, her hands surprisingly steady as she fitted the glass with care, securing it with putty she found in a drawer. Max patrolled each corner like a foreman on a work site, occasionally letting out a short bark whenever he encountered a fallen nail, or scurrying Mouse alerting them with the dignity of a guard who understood the importance of order. As the light shifted toward afternoon, Angela paused beside a wooden shelf, kneeling to retrieve a small box wedged beneath it. She opened it and drew out a yellowed note written in the terse handwriting of a social worker. Her voice trembled as she read aloud, "Maternal grandmother arrived requesting custody. Adoption already finalized. Request denied." Angela's breathing caught her eyes blinking rapidly as tears welled. She whispered, voice cracking. "My mother came back for you. They told me she refused, that she wanted nothing to do with us. They lied to both of us." Olivia stepped forward, kneeling beside her. She placed a hand on Angela's shoulder, steady, forgiving, not with words but with presence. It was the first time Angela allowed herself to truly lean into the truth that her child had never been unwanted, just misplaced by systems and fears larger than any one person could hold. By evening, the cabin had changed. The dust that once represented abandonment now made way for beams of light that pierced in through the newly cleaned windows. On the main wall, Olivia gently placed the framed ultrasound image of her unborn daughter. Next to it, Angela reverently hung a faded photograph of baby Samantha in Evelyn's arms, the child they now knew had been Olivia herself. Two lives separated by decades were brought into visual conversation on that wall, one black and white and bound to the past, one grainy and glowing with the promise of new life. Night fell and the cold deepened, but inside the cabin the fireplace roared with life after years of silence. Olivia sat in an armchair near the fire, a mug of hot cocoa warming her hands. Angela sat opposite her, the flames casting soft amber light over her features, revealing the strain in the set of her jaw, and the wetness still lingering at the edge of her lashes. She looked at Olivia not as a stranger, not as a ghost from a life she had lost, but as her child. "I was afraid," Angela said quietly, a voice thick with emotion. "All those years I told myself you were better off without me. But the truth is I was the one who didn't know how to fight. I'm sorry. I'm sorry for every silence." Olivia looked at her mother not with anger, but with clarity. She reached across the small wooden table and took Angela's hand, guiding it gently to rest over her belly. "We can't change what was," Olivia said softly, "but we can decide what will be." Outside, Flagstaff lay under a fresh layer of snow, soft and untouched, as though the world had been given a clean page. For the first time, the cabin did not feel like a place of endings. It felt like the threshold of beginnings. By late February, the snow in Flagstaff had lost its sharpness and taken on a softer hue, as though the land itself was breathing differently, preparing for something new. The cabin that had once held dust and secrets now exhaled warmth each time its door opened. Olivia Carter moved slowly through its rooms, not as a visitor, but as someone learning the layout of her own heart for the first time. She had officially relocated from Tempe, bringing only essentials: a crib, a rocking chair, and a box of well-worn books. Everything else she had decided would be built here: new objects, new memories, new beginnings. Angela Brooks, now working part-time night shifts at the Flagstaff Medical Center, had chosen a modest rental apartment 10 minutes down the road. It was the first time since she was 19 that she woke each morning knowing her daughter was within reach, and soon her granddaughter too. Angela's once carefully controlled demeanor had softened. She wore her curly black hair down more often now, framing her warm brown face, and when she smiled, the kind that made her hazel eyes glow like embers, she did not hide it as she once had. She had the bearing of a woman who had reclaimed permission to feel. Max had also adapted to his elevated role as guardian of the unborn. Each morning after breakfast, the 3-year-old German Shepherd would gently rest his head against Olivia's belly and listen, his tail sweeping the floor with soft, rhythmic contentment. Olivia would smile down at him, running her fingers through the thick fur along his neck, whispering, "She knows you're here." And in those moments, the cabin felt like the safest place in the world. Outside, they hung a handmade wooden sign beside the door, Angela carved the letters, and Olivia stained the wood. Home is a verb, because now for the first time home was not a place that happened to them. It was something they chose to build. Late one night while snowflakes tapped gently at the window panes, Olivia woke to a tightening across her belly, sharp, rhythmic. She gasped, gripping the edge of the bed. Max immediately lifted his head from the rug beside her ears, rising eyes wide, his body tense with understanding. Olivia's breath came shallow and fast. "It's time," she whispered. Max let out a single soft bark and raced toward Angela's room down the hall. Minutes later, Angela appeared in the doorway already dressed, her nurse's instinct activated. Though her face was calm, her eyes shone with a quiet awe. She guided Olivia through breathing exercises, her steady hands on Olivia's shoulders, voice low and soothing. Gone was the fear of the woman who had once let life slip beyond reach. In its place stood a mother ready to reclaim every moment she had been denied. Lightning did not strike. Winds did not howl. Instead, the world seemed to hold its breath. The fire crackled softly. A lantern glowed golden in the corner. Max paced at the foot of the bed, then lay down with his paws extended. His gaze fixed on Olivia with unwavering trust, as if he were anchoring her spirit to this earth. An hour passed, then two. The contractions intensified with a force that seemed to split time itself. Angela wiped Olivia's brow, whispering, "You are strong. She is strong. You are not alone." Olivia's eyes, wet with tears, did not leave her mother's. There were no words left to fix the past, only presence, only forgiveness expressed through touch, breath, and steadfastness. Just before dawn, a cry pierced the cabin, a sound both fragile and fierce, like the world announcing itself anew. Olivia laughed and sobbed at once. Angela's knees buckled as emotion overwhelmed her, hands pressed to her lips, tears falling freely unhidden. Max stood and let out a trembling breath, his tail rising slowly, ears tilted forward as if standing guard over a miracle. Under the soft lamplight, Olivia held her daughter for the first time. The baby's skin was flushed, her hair dark and fine, her fists curled into tiny declarations of life. "Lily," Olivia whispered. "Welcome home." Angela reached out her fingers, brushing Lily's cheek. The baby quieted eyes, drifting toward the sound of her grandmother's heartbeat, as if she recognized a rhythm she had never heard yet always known. Later, as the sun rose over the snow-bright mountains, the three generations stepped out onto the rebuilt porch. Lily was nestled in Olivia's arms, wrapped in a knitted blanket that had belonged to Evelyn Miller, a silent acknowledgement that even broken histories could become foundations if given new purpose. Angela stood beside them, one hand on Olivia's shoulder. Max sat proudly at their feet, eyes following the drifting snowflakes as if watching angels descend. No trumpets sounded, no great lights appeared in the sky. Yet in the hush of Flagstaff morning, a vow was made, unspoken but absolute. This child would never know the ache of being unwanted. No one in this family would ever again be left outside the door. And as the snow continued to fall in gentle blessing, it did not feel like winter. It felt like a beginning. They say miracles do not arrive with thunder or fire, but in the quiet turning of hearts, when what was once broken becomes whole again, not by our strength but by God's grace. In that small cabin beneath the Flagstaff sky, three generations stood together, not because life had been fair, but because God had never stopped working in the unseen. He weaved redemption through years of silence, turning abandonment into belonging, sorrow into legacy, and a forgotten place into holy ground. This story is not just about Olivia, Angela, or little Lily. It is about all of us, those who have ever felt lost, overlooked, or too far gone to be found. It is a reminder that no matter how many winters we've walked through, God can still send a dawn. He does not erase the past. He redeems it and uses it as the foundation for new beginnings. If you are listening to this right now, it is not by accident. Perhaps God is trying to tell you the chapter is not over. The place that once held your deepest pain may soon become the birthplace of your greatest miracle. Hold on, believe again, pray again, because the same God who brought Lily into the world surrounded by love after generations of separation is the same God who is working quietly in your life too. If this story has touched your heart, let us know in the comments where you are watching from. Share this video with someone who needs hope. Click subscribe if you believe God still writes miracles in the lives of ordinary people. And may the Lord bless you and your family, bring healing to the places that hurt, and remind you tonight, You are never outside the reach of his love. Type Amen if you receive this blessing.